Good morning, everybody. I think we're ready to get started now. If I can figure out how to get this microphone to be in a position where you can't hear it every time I breathe out through my nose. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. Breathe in. Breathe out. We're going to do a square breath. We're going to do 3 of those. We're going to breathe in for 3. Hold for 3. Breathe out for 3. Hold for 3. Breathe in for 3. Hold for 3. Breathe out for 3. Breathe in for 3. Let us take a moment to arrive, to notice the ground supporting us, the breath moving through us, the light that allows us to see one another, the other kind of light that is each other. We come here in spiritual practice. You are welcome here. You are wanted here. You are needed here. May this be a space of clarity, courage, and care. Amen. Before we dive into new material today, I want to remind us where we've been. In our first session, we talked about change, about the omnipresence of change, both within us and around us, and we took a moment to reflect on how it is that we respond to change. I introduced a dichotomy not because any one of us is perfectly a 1 or a 0, but because the dichotomy offers a continuum along which we might locate ourselves and decide which direction we'd like to move. On one end, and I won't hesitate to call it the unhealthy end, is dogmatism, which we defined as closing ourselves off to learning, closing off to new experience in our bodies, closing off to our emotions, closing ourselves off to changing our mind. I further suggested that this closed posture leads to what we know famously as the definition of insanity, trying the same thing over and over and expecting different results, or, in other words, making the same mistakes over and over, or slightly more psychologically, being caught in repetitive patterns of dysfunctional reactions. On the other end, we have the opposite, integration, which we can describe as a fully open stance. Open to new experience, open to feeling our emotions fully, open to revising our understanding of the world, our mental models, as we learn from new experiences and each other. I similarly suggested this open stance is a way out of insanity, a way to have more effective agency in our lives because we are practicing iterative learning. In our second session, we began here, examining identity through 2 of the most contentious terms in contemporary American English language, conservative and liberal. I invited you into an exercise that reclaims these words as tools that are applicable to all of us, and to loosen our grip on them as identities. Looking backward, I want to suggest that holding them too tightly is itself a manifestation of the dogmatism that we spoke of in session 1. I used this driving analogy to attempt to drive home the point that healthy people and healthy systems need a combination of liberal and conservative tendencies in order to navigate a changing world. We can't keep things the same, and we can't change everything all at once. Wisdom is steering, and it is also honoring when to use the brakes and when to use the gas. We went through a list of other identities that you might hold that tempt you into holding them too tightly, that might invite you to take that closed dogmatic stance where they are concerned. I asked the question, What would change if you held those identities less tightly? And I left you with this prompt. An identity that holds you limits you. An identity that you hold is and can be what you need it to be. It can be history, it can be a tool, it can be a guide, or it can bear witness. Does anybody have any curiosities or comments about our first two sessions that they'd like to share or put in front of the group before we move into new material this morning? All right. Here we are, session 3. Gut, heart, and head. Now we're going to add another dimension to our inquiry. If we imagine this continuum from dogmatism to integration as a horizontal axis, what we're going to talk about next is the vertical dimension. Today we're going to talk about the first 3 layers of that vertical dimension, and in our 4th session, we'll talk about the 4th layer. Gut. Your body is the site of experience. It knows before you do. It registers safety, danger, and what is through systems older than thought and more primal than emotion. The body does not lie. Heart. Your heart is the site of emotion. It knows through feeling. It feels the weight of love, of joy and sorrow, of praise and grief, of enjoyment and suffering. The heart metabolizes our experiences. The head. Your head is the site of cognition. It knows through pattern and language. It analyzes, categorizes, and builds meaning. It constructs our mental models, our representations of what is. The head makes sense of our lives. When pressure rises, as it does in our lives, conflicts. But when pressure rises, what is your go-to and what is your last resort? Part of the hypothesis about these 3 layers is that each of us has a default. It's the thing that we go to when things get tough. It's the thing that we reach for first in our tool bag when we're trying to solve problems or make changes or address an issue that's come up in our lives. This work is largely derived from the Enneagram, and I'm going to share a tool with you that will help you, I hope, identify what your default is and also what your last resort is. I jokingly call this tool Eric's dysfunctional visualizations, because in Enneagram work, what they teach is if I give you the positive definition of what each of these looks like when you center it, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I see that in me. Sure, I have my feelings when I need to, and I have my thoughts when I need to, and I'm active when I need to. But where we really see ourselves clearly is when we see the dysfunction in our primary way of being. So, my visualization for gut people is you are the ones polishing the brass on the Titanic. You don't care what's going on out there, but if you stay busy, it's going to be okay. The gut is action-oriented. It's intuitive. It's just going to pick the first thing. Yep, that railing looks good. I'm just going to work on this. I don't care what chaos is going on out there. I can't control it, but I'm going to stay active. I'm going to stay busy, and I'm going to keep doing my polishing. I don't want to talk about it too much. I don't want to think about it too much. I don't want to feel it. I just want to, just let me do my thing. Okay. So that's gut people. Heart people. The visualization for heart people looks like this. The house is on fire, And you think that would be a good time to sit down and talk about how everybody's feeling about it. That'd be a great time for us to get together and figure out, how's everybody feeling? How are you feeling about that? I think that was your favorite armoire that just burned. Head people. This one's my favorite because it hits home for me. I always recall the scene from Monty Python in the life of Brian. Brian has just been captured by the Romans. And Judith comes running into the meeting and says, they've taken away Brian. And Reg stands, looks, this calls for immediate discussion. Right? Not action, not feeling. We got to talk about this. What does it mean? How does it happen? What are our possible courses of action? Okay. So, our goal here is going to be that I'm going to ask you to fill these in for yourself. What is your go-to, head, heart, or gut? What is your last resort? Which one do you turn to last? And what's your middle one? And I say it in that order because that's usually what's easiest for most people. They know what their go-to is, and they know what their last resort is, and the middle one is like, oh yeah, I use that sometimes. Now, for some of you, depending on how you've been showing up to the work of resolving this in your life, might find it easier to think about what you were like in your early 20s. That's also an Enneagram piece of advice. If none of this is really resonating for you, think about what you did when you were in your 20s. Because you've probably developed a lot of coping mechanisms, for those of us who are way out of our 20s, that have started to compensate for some of this. But if you think about how you were in your 20s, that sometimes gives you a slightly clearer window into what your default is. Because the truth is, your defaults don't usually change, but we do learn coping mechanisms around them. So I'm going to invite you to take a minute and just write down on your page, what is your go-to? What is your backup, and what is your last resort of these three centers? Gut is action, intuition. Heart, feeling, and emotion. Head, thinking, talking, strategizing. Does anybody else need a handout? Okay. I'm a 7W8. Hi, Jess. Maybe you could write a memo about how I copied your slides. All right, quick note. We hear a lot of talk these days about gaslighting. And the opposite of gaslighting for me, the opposite of making somebody feel crazy for how they show up, even when there's nothing wrong with it, is normalizing. Oh, yes, you're feeling grief? I've had that in my life. I know that's a real thing, right? So when we see each other, we normalize that, like, there's diversity, there's difference, there's this, that, and the other, and it's all normal human stuff, and it's all okay. Because a lot of us were raised in a world where anything that deviated from the fat part of the bell curve was cause for shame. So, I'm just going to ask you to quick show of hands. Who is a gut person? Go-to gut. We have any go-to gut people in the room? Diane Dancer. And Jess. Thank you. Oh, sorry. And how about heart people? How about feeling people? Very nice. Thank you so much. And how many head folks do we have in the crowd? Right. Excellent. Thank you all so much for sharing. All right. So we're going to take this, we're going to peel this onion one layer deeper. So think about what your go-to is, and then we're going to give you a minute to finish the following sentence. My go-to serves me. And what I mean by that is it serves you well. Like, it works for you. It's good for you. Like, your go-to thing is great in situations where blank. So you're going to finish the sentence. My go-to serves me when. But then I want you to flip that over. No, I'm going to let you write now. Think about when it is that being a feeling person is awesome, or being a gut person or a head person. Like, when is it in your life that has like really served you? In your career, in your family relationships, in whatever aspect of your life where you feel like, man, being that kind of person made this thing really, made me good at it, made it good for me. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and do the second one. My go-to causes me trouble when. Yes, third one, sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Yes, the third one. My go-to causes me trouble when. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you going to say more about this notion that the body doesn't lie?
We can. I can. Let me see if I can find some time to come back to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would argue that sometimes it does.
Okay. I think I'm going to ask you to say more, but not quite yet.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you guys a funny story. I was at a conference on Thursday this past week. Brene Brown was keynoting, and I showed up to a session like this, and I had to sit where y'all are and do deep reflection on the spot in the middle of a crowd of people. And I was like, oh, man, I forgot this is hard. Like, it's hard to be on the other end, and you're like, wait, what? You want me to think about what? Okay, let me try and get my brain into that space and write something that might mean something to me later. Anyway, I was just taking this as a moment of empathy that it can be easy when you're standing up here to forget how much work it is for you out there. But I got to experience that just a couple days ago. So what I'll say is this. One of the things that we know and practice in this congregation is that people are at very different points on their own journeys, right? People are amazingly uneven in their development, right? Like, some people are like, got the intellect developed up to a 9, emotional regulations at a 6. You know, I mean, just like, it's all over the map, and it shows up in every room we're in, right? And so the weird thing about trying to design a curriculum like this is you're trying to create something that can land and resonate at all these different frequencies. But what that also means is that you get to address this from whatever frequency you're at. So even if how you're approaching this or what comes up for you doesn't seem totally resonant or in line with what I'm saying, that's just more about us being on slightly different frequencies. It's not that you're doing this wrong. Like, you have to show up to this work from where you're at. And I have to try to cast a broad enough net that the experience of the workshop can hold you no matter where you show up from. And you get to tell me when I'm off, right? That's part of the feedback that helps all of us do this work together. Not just you, Jim, but I'm, yeah. Well, yes, the whole monologue was not pointed at you, but the gesture was, I just wanted you to know that it's welcome. Any pushback is welcome, right? Like, this isn't working for me. You can say that. If you can't say that here, where in your life can you do it? Like, if we're not building a place where you can raise your hand and say, this isn't working for me. That's one of the things we're learning together, is that kind of self-advocacy isn't a cause for shame or excommunication. It's a cause for celebration, that we're learning something about what that diversity feels like to live inside of. All right. I'm going to take a guess that when you wrote "my go-to causes me trouble when," you were probably also observing the flip side of what your last resort is. So I'm going to invite you we're going to do a quick show of hands again on whose last resort is gut. Last resort, gut. Okay? Thank you. And if your heart is the last resort, feelings are the last resort? Yeah. All right. And head, last resort. We got any head, last resort people here? Oh, we got 2. Oh, 3. Yeah. No, it's all good. It's all good. And the value of this exercise is not getting it right. The value is, I'll say what the Dalai Lama says. All the teachings are just tools. And you pick up the tool, and you try and use it, you see how it fits your hand, and you decide whether it's a good tool for you or not. And so what we're doing with this is we're trying out some tools. If they're useful, you might use them long enough that you get to a place where you really feel like, I understand my batting order and I understand how it showed up in my life. And you might get to a place where you're like, oh, I want to dig deeper on that. And then you might go spend a couple years doing Enneagram work. Because Enneagram, Enneagram, Enneagram. You can write it down if you want. If you like the shape of this blunt tool, the Enneagram is a much more sophisticated tool, but this is based on its core model, which is that there are these 3 centers, and early in life, we come to rely on one of them, and we usually come to repress another one. Now, if you do the weird math, that ends up with 3 times 3 is 9. And there are 9 basic buckets in the Enneagram. Now, what's confusing to me, and I still haven't figured out because my own Enneagram work hasn't gone deep enough, but it also means that there's at least one of those where the thing that is your go-to is also the thing that's repressed. Now, that's the one that'll break your brain, or breaks my brain when I think about it. Anyway, but the general Enneagram types are about this batting order, because an Enneagram workshop would be 6 weeks of 2-hour sessions just to get you introduced to the thing. So we're looking at a more abstract version. If any of you get interested, you can talk to me. I like Suzanne Stabile's oral teachings of it is my favorite, and I've read a bunch of stuff. Yes, Bill.
I think there is a book that presents kind of a lay presentation of the Enneagram called "Please Understand Me."
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, "Please Understand Me" is good. I haven't read it, but I've read about it. Oh, Oh, that's the Myers-Briggs book. The truth, there are more Enneagram, there are a lot of Enneagram books. And on the spectrum from super simplified to super complex, there's a bunch. It,
What was one you just recommended though before we started talking about?
oh, Suzanne Stabile. Yeah, she's a minister actually out of Dallas. But you can go to her website and you can you can get access to Vimeo video of her teaching it orally. And originally, all Enneagram teaching, it started as an oral tradition. And I think it lands best that way. So when my wife and I did our Enneagram work, we got the Suzanne Stabile videos. She's a student of Dr. Richard Rohr's. And I have a lot of respect for him. Anybody here Richard Rohr fan? A couple people. Yeah, he's a Catholic monk who's also into the Enneagram and just he's a very wise, one of the wisest living people, I would argue, based on my readings. All right. Did we get all the way through this? Yeah. Did we? Did we do everybody? Did we do every group? Or did I get sidetracked? Head last. Yep, we did it. Yep, we did that. All right, here we go. All right. I'm looking at the time. Yep, we're okay. All right. We're going to break into small groups of 2 or 3 people, and I'm going to invite you to share your sentences about what works well and what causes you trouble with each other. So we're going to give that about I'd like each person to share for 2 or 3 minutes. So let's try and break into equal-sized groups. Can I get you to swing over with these 2 folks over here? Then this is a group of 3. That's a group of 3. Lauren, can you join this couple here? Y'all can be a group of 3, and then this group of 3. So we'll do about 9 minutes. So you'll have 2 or 3 minutes each. I'll ring the bell at each break point. And if you didn't write anything down and you're just going to talk about it, that's okay. right, we should be transitioning to the third person sharing. All right, I'm going to invite y'all to start wrapping up. Return to the larger group as you're ready. All right. So sometimes, for some of us, and this is another dimension that we're not going to get into, but for some of us, the act of individual journaling, where we're letting what's in our head just come out through our pen is the moment, that's a tool that tends to generate insight. So I'm going to invite you to notice this, even though we're not going to get into it from a teaching perspective, but I just want you to notice whether you had moments of surprise or insight while you were writing, while you were talking, or maybe while you were listening to other people. That's an important thing to notice about you. It's an important thing to notice about you, what kind of interaction with yourself, with the world, puts you in a place where you're receptive to surprising yourself. Did anybody have an experience of surprise about themselves during this process that they'd like to share with the group? Dave. Now, let me ask, the plan that you're sharing, is it an intuition that's arriving whole, or is it, oh, my gut says head this way, and then head kicks in and starts filling in the details? How does that land for you? Like, when you think, I know what to do and I'm going to tell him, is it coming from here?
No, it's my head.
Okay, interesting. Is the certainty coming from your gut, though? Is that why you said you're a gut person?
That's some of it.
Okay, cool.
But off the cuff, it's mostly my head.
Yeah. I would have pegged you as a head person. That's why I was a little surprised to hear you say gut. No, but there's not a right or wrong. Look, I'm going to tell you the deep truth and then a different deep truth that are going to sound contradictory. Because wisdom lies at the heart of paradox. Our ability and capacity to hold paradoxes are real, true things. Because language is not the truth. The words we speak are just fingers pointing at the moon, where the moons are the real things, right? And so what it means is that we can have two fingers that look opposed, but they're pointing at some real object in the middle. And when we talk about this in theological terms, sometimes we call it holding the tension. We're holding the tension between two truths that seem polar, because both of those truths are pointing at some more difficult to describe truth that lies between them and forms a real connective tissue, right, between these two things. So, one, you're not any of this crap. You are a thing, enmeshed in a much larger thing that is interconnected to you and permeates you. And so there's no carving you out of the world to even make you into an atomized individual that can then be dissected into gut, heart, mind. It's all of it is fictional. And if we do our analytical work well, our fictions can be amazingly productive ways of us developing tools for self-understanding and doing things together, right? So we can carve, I preached about this a few months ago, we can carve God up into 0 pieces, 1 piece, or a bazillion pieces. God isn't changed by the carving. The carving is just us trying to make sense of our world using this tool up here, right? So there's not a right or wrong answer to this. And some of you will find you slot more cleanly into this analytical set of categories than others who will feel like these aren't the right analytical categories for me, for the way I experience my life. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. That just means that this framework isn't one that serves your need to know at this moment in your journey particularly well, right? Do you see the tension I'm holding up? Like, the analytical tools become problems when we mistake them for the reality they're attempting to describe. And that reality is a deeply interwoven and interconnected whole that none of us can fully grok. That's why we need the tools. We can't take in the all that is of the universe and understand it in our little monkey brains. They're just not robust enough for such an endeavor. So we use analytical tools to carve things up into bite-sized chunks that our little monkey brains can handle. But we have to not mistake the carving for the reality that it describes.
Just rely on AI. Amen.
If any of you have played deeply with AI, and I have, I will say this. AI's willingness to take a scalpel to anything makes the human tendency to do so look careful and considered. It will develop new analytical categories out of whole cloth that have no anchor in any human experience I can grok. Now, that being said, after deep conversation and iteration, it can become a powerful tool in the same way that there's surgery now that surgeons can do with the micro manipulators and the microscope scope that just weren't possible without that tool. That's true. But if you get in there with your microscope and your thing, you will kill somebody real fast if you don't know what you're doing, right? And AI is like that. If you don't know how to use it, And if you don't have your own spiritual discernment online when it's telling you things, it will feed you lines of crap that seem real believable.
Does anyone check these three defining centers?
No.
I don't think so.
No, it doesn't. No. We're not going to get into the ontology of AI today, but thank you for the invitation, Bill Hornbuckle. Maybe we'll do another session on that later. Hey, buddy. All right. Where's my... speaking of tools, analytical tools, here's mine. All right. So what I'm trying to get at... Oh, sorry. Did other people have stuff they wanted to share? Sorry, I stopped at Dave. I got sidetracked. Chris.
My go-to, I put is the head, and I do a lot of thinking about things, and I find, and the question of like, what does it serve me? And I feel like in most cases I use it, it doesn't really serve me very well, and I end up defaulting to just going with my gut, and you know, that's when Georgetown, that's when, I came here. There's a lot of like decisions I've made that were preceded by a lot of like thinking in a circle, and just finally when I actually just say, okay, whatever, and you know, like that's when I actually move, and it's good.
Yeah, that's awesome. So is gut your number two, or...
But that is as my last resort.
But what you're finding at this point in your life is that you're starting to figure out how to let go and trust it.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
you know, it's substantial.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All right.
But yeah, like I've always been, here I think about things.
Yeah.
And it was not, and it's, I can't think of a situation where I feel like I've done a really good job of thinking something through to the point of making a decision. In most cases, it's like, I just think about it, until the time ends, and then I do something. And it's not necessarily that informed it or whatever, but it does feel like it's a separate process that I have to get around for thinking to do. That was where I got.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. Jim.
Just briefly,
Yeah.
based on what you said a moment ago, I would now go back and change everything I've written, say, for each one, I would say it depends on the situation.
Yes.
Because there are times when my first reaction is the head.
Yeah.
If I'm confronted with a legal problem back in my career.
Sure.
Or there are times when it's the gut.
Sure.
There are times when it's the heart. So
Yeah.
each one of these,
Yeah.
I could fill in with all three depending on the situation.
Yeah. So what about when you were in your 20s?
Well, again, I think it varies.
Okay.
Professor asks a question in class,
Yeah.
and I need to respond.
But what about when you were in crisis? Like, what about when things were tough for you?
Okay, when things got then I would go back to I think feelings would be the first.
Okay.
Although, if you define gut as your instinctive reaction that precedes thought, then gut is always the first reaction.
Yeah. Earliest in time sequence, though, doesn't mean default. Because some people literally stop there and go do. And some people let that... So there is a time sequence of experience that's neurological. There's a time sequence involved in this that is neurological, as well as an unfolding over a longer span of time that's developmental. That all complicates this. Okay. No, that's not what I want. I want this one. The gut is shorthand for the body, which means all the old systems. That fight, flight, freeze stuff that kicks in, that your body's moving before your brain has had time. Before you've had time to feel anything about it or think anything about it, you're reacting in an embodied way. And in our littlest ones, we see that, like, this is the area of them that develops first, right? It is foundational in that way. It is foundational in time sequence. It's earliest in time order of the unpacking of things. And some people stay at that level even after they develop. I don't mean stay at that level in a pejorative way, so don't misunderstand me. They continue to react from an intuitive gut embodied place, even after their faculty for processing emotion and their faculty for thinking have evolved and developed. They continue to be gut people. And one of the things that gut people would do, they're prone to taking action, and to taking action that other people don't understand because it's coming from some intuitive place, right? Some people, when after those centers develop, our emotional centers start to develop, and then last to come online is our sort of cognitive centers. Like, that's a developmental sequence. But what we're talking about here is that after all of those centers have come online, which one do you rely on? And the question about what were you like when you were 20 sometimes helps some people get some insight into that. The question, what do you do when, pardon my friend, what do you do when things get tough, or when the feces hits the fan, as I like to say? That usually tells you a lot about what your go-to is, because that's the tool that you reach for first. Jess, please.
You had a line that was like, under pressure, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to your defects, you don't rise to your values, you fall to your default.
Yeah, right. The way I phrased it for this one was that you fall to the level of your integration.
Right. So I'm curious if there's an opportunity for all of us to be more intentional about feeling the way our body feels when we're under pressure, and using that as a warning signal to say, hey, like danger, I'm
Yeah.
about to react instead because I feel like my face getting hot or my body tightening or whatever it is. That's a warning sign that we can say, hey, maybe we shouldn't react right now, and we should instead
Right.
be intentional in the decision we're about to make and think about who we want to be next.
Yeah. We're gonna dive deeper into that. So Jess just gave you a preview of our next session next week. But yes, we're gonna dive into, once we're aware that we have a default, and maybe we're aware that we have a default and several coping mechanisms that we've developed in our lives, so that at this point in our lives, it wouldn't surprise me to find out that in this room are people who have already figured this out at some point along their lives. Maybe they don't use the same language I do, but they figured this out, and they figured out, you know what? My wife has given me the look like it says that I just killed her favorite plant. This is not a time for the head. This is a time to show up and say, honey, you look really upset. I'm going to reach out and connect with you emotionally, because that seems to be the center of the moment that's happening. Yes, I hope that many of you have developed such skills. I'm developing a framework here that will help you hopefully put some language and some around those skills that you've developed as an invitation to deepen those skills, and as an invitation for people among us who maybe they're, whatever their last resort is, maybe they're still repressing it. And the only way to take your hand off of that repression and start living that thing is to become aware that that's what you're doing. And so what we're trying to do today is to generate some of that awareness. And so every one of these responses is intelligent. There's embodied intelligence, there's emotional intelligence, there's cognitive intelligence. They're all forms of intelligence. And each one of them developed to help you survive something, navigate something, respond to something. Our go-tos are usually formed out of early traumas. I'll just tell you, the literature is usually pretty consistent about this, that usually it's early and traumatic hardship that sets those defaults in place early in life. And then later in life, as Chris was saying, later in life you start to realize, man, if I keep leaning on this thing, I end up going in a circle. It can't be my only go-to. Well, oh, what? Did I interrupt you? I am so sorry. My bad. So, right? This is part of the unfolding of life as we age and mature, as we start to realize that some of the habits we developed early on don't serve us anymore. And the theory behind this is that having a framework to understand those shifts when they happen in your life might help you unfold and release some of that stuff cleaner, sooner, better. Okay. So here's my proposition. Wisdom is not about having the right go-to. Wisdom is about recognizing when our go-to is and isn't the best choice. In the moment. In a moment when something happens, noticing, well, usually I'd want to think about this real hard, but this moment calls for action, or this moment calls for feeling. Or the opposite. My default would be, let's sit down and have a circle and talk about our feelings, but I think this is a moment that requires us to develop a strategy, or to go do something.
I discovered, I think,
Yes.
in processing this, that I use my go-to when I'm feeling defensive.
Feeling defensive is absolutely one of those critical moments where your go-to is going to surface.
Would you repeat that again?
Wisdom is recognizing when your go-to is and isn't the best choice. All right. Oh, I gotta get back to where I was. Beep, 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 beep. Oh, there we go. So, in thinking through, and Pam, I just wanted to say out loud that I heard you when you said that for you, imagining this stuff without being given some kind of grounding narrative or scenario is really hard. I'm going to leave myself a note. Maybe I'll think about a way to add into the thing some kind of general situation or something to help folks for whom just thinking abstractly is not their go-to. Because I'm an abstract thinker, and so sometimes when I design things, they resonate. They're easier on that register, or for folks who think like I do, right? And so one of the reasons that we do this work collectively is so that we can start to adapt it so that it fits well for all the types of people, not just the ones who look most like me. All right, we need head, heart, and gut situationally. We need thinking, feeling, and doing situationally. Self-awareness, which is what we're trying to cultivate through these reflections, enables us to choose our center even under pressure. In other words, self-awareness allows us, even if we're a head default, to say, now's a time for action, now's a time for emotions. Self-awareness opens the door. Self-awareness is where we'll begin our work next week when we'll begin our exploration of the fourth layer. Anyone have any final thoughts, comments, questions or observations they'd like to share before we end today? Bill,
Excuse me.
please.
When you said in that last self-awareness enables choosing, if you're talking about choosing, are you not talking about an exclusively mental?
I am not.
Okay.
But that is a fantastic question, and we are absolutely going to dig into that next week, because you are right to sense that implicit in what I'm talking about is also a theory of agency and what human agency looks like, what it means, and where it comes from. Do I need to reframe that into non-sociological terms? We're going to talk about how we choose and where we choose from and what that looks like in terms of our ability to, say, create justice in the face of injustice or to heal a world that's hurting. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. Thank you all so much for your time and attention today. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next week. Oh, I'm going to put this on your radar. So Jess and I have been talking. It ends up that, so Jess does presentations in her professional role, and she's like, our slide decks are radically parallel. So I do want to put on y'all's radar to think about for next week whether you'd like to extend this, and we'll schedule Jess for a follow-up 5th session, and I'll join the audience, and we'll all let Jess run us through her presentation deck, which she thinks nicely parallels the work we've been doing. So just something to think about, and we'll try and we'll talk about when and how to schedule that at our 4th session next week. Hi, Katie. Yes, sir.